So hi, Rick. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Colleen, the president of 43North, and one of the kind of founders of our Students to Startups program that's been around for a few years now. So we're resurrecting it virtually to allow us to share some content with local schools around Western New York, to share with their students just kind of our founder stories and the humans that they are despite all that they do. So it would be helpful as an introduction to just tell us about yourself. Top line, what are you up to these days? We're going to go back in time through the interview. So where are you? Clearly your beautiful background, but just a little bit about you as a person.
Okay, well, I'm Rick Bulman. I'm CEO of Regentys Corporation. I'm down in Miami, Florida. We have a startup life sciences company that's in the process of developing a novel hydrogel for the treatment of ulcerative colitis, which is a irritable bowel, inflammatory bowel disease that lots of people suffer from, and we're in the process of trying to find a treatment and a cure.
Got it.
I originally from Western New York, grew up in Lancaster, New York, spent my formative years there, went to school up in New York, attended the University of Albany undergrad, University of Buffalo Law School graduate, came down after that, practiced law, and just sort of fell into the life sciences lifestyle, I guess. A lot of early stage startups, a lot of technology companies, and I've had a great opportunity to live the dream.
Awesome. Well, good. So today we're going to talk about how you got to living that dream. So go back. I get a sense you were in Lancaster for high school. Tell us, what school did you go to? What classes do you seem to remember? What clubs were you part? Like, what did your high school years look like now that you look back?
It's quite funny because when I talk to friends of mine about school, and even when I have friends of mine visit, sort of like the hometown USA, it came out of like a storybook. Quaint little town, we had a large size high school, but I mean, for the most part, everything was very neighborhoody. You went to school with all your friends, you grew up in the neighborhood and you played after school and you hung out. Lancaster, it did well for me, I mean, I had my first job there and worked scooping ice cream, doing odd jobs. Delivering newspapers, selling seeds door to door, being in the Boy Scouts, that kind of stuff. High school was interesting. I mean, I enjoyed it, but I was anxious for it to get over with because I liked applying things, taking knowledge and applying it to things. So I was a little, how should we say, reluctant to kind of just sort of sit around and wait for things to happen. In high school, I think one of the things I remember most is I was irritated because the small town that I grew up in didn't have a park for us to play in that was close by that we could go and do. So I wrote a letter to the mayor, complained, and he put me on a citizens advisory board, and I got actively involved in that. So I took, I think, an interest in the political process and, community and government affairs during my high school years. And as and the Scouts and doing stuff like that, we were continuing to participate in lots of different community events. So I sort of had a bent to civic service and that kind of stuff. And so I ended up, when I left high school, during high school, I spent quite a bit of time doing political science classes and things of that nature. Enjoyed English and history, things like that.
I love it. So I sense early on, because we often talk about how entrepreneurship can be driven by your aggravation with something, right?
Yeah.
Something drives you so crazy that you want to find a way to fix it. And it sounds like that was instilled in you quite young with the park example.
Yeah, it was. And, it's funny because I think you feel like you can do things, I mean, I felt when I grew up, I could do things. And I just, my parents were big, if you don't like it, go do something about it. And so to that extent, I think you just understand the power of just being a kid, I mean, and you can do a lot of really positive things. And you see kids online today doing all kinds of really excellent things. And I feel like, it just empowers them to decide what's important and have the opportunity to go and do it and not be limited by what other people think or circumstances or anything else. That's the biggest thing, because there's always going to be reasons not to do things, right? But there's a lot bigger reasons and a lot better reasons to actually do things.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we like to say the easy way to go about things is to not do anything, right? It's to just accept things that drive you nuts, or, and go about life. But we as people, and particularly students, they have such I mean, think about how often does a mayor receive a handwritten letter from a student? That's
Yeah.
not a daily occurrence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the courage to speak up or make actions to provoke change is something we highly encourage as well. But Rick, talk through, your favorite classes in school. Were you drawn to the sciences even back then? Or, were there certain classes that you feel impacted how you became a leader today?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I have, I enjoyed science, but I was a lot stronger in I love to write. Again, social studies, politics, history, all that kind of stuff was great. And I look at that more as a sort of a characterization for the practice of law in a lot of respects. The science, I was always curious about science, and I was interested in science, but I never really went beyond the sort of rudimentary stuff. And I think it was more just the frustration of school generally, just being one of a number or whatever. So, most of my reading, if I was interested, I'd get a book at the library, and I would do things along those lines. And I think that sort of continued throughout my life, just finding those things that have, meaning or interest, and pursuing them independently from, the social delivery mechanism, I guess I look at that. Early stage in college, I took more science courses, and this sort of led to, more of an activity, but more career growth, just working for companies that were in technology. I mean, that was sort of my objective. I kind of, in the early years, I think that you kind of just figure, I'm going to stick with the things I like. And during high school, it's like become a well-rounded person, right? But honestly, it's really what you do well and what drives you that's going to be the difference. When you're in middle school and high school, you're looking at the things you like to do and the things you don't like to do, and I think from my perspective, if you're mindful of the things you're doing, those things speak to you right away, and they're going to stay with you your whole life. I love to draw, right? And I always thought about being an artist and like to do that kind of stuff. My mother's like, really, you like to talk more than anything else. So drawing's great. That'd be a great side career, but, do what you want to do, but consider this, consider, practice law, consider those kinds of things. And then my mother was exactly right. And I get to paint now for fun, and I enjoy myself along those lines, but your parents kind of know, they watch.
It is amazing what they, or teachers or guidance counselors know, keeping an eye on you.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about, Rick, any changes you would make if you were to look back, would you have done anything differently in regards, I mean, clearly you were quite well-rounded, both in the classroom and outside of school. Anything that you would have done differently?
Life's kind of like a journey, and I think you get choices. And when you make them, it leads you along a particular path. And it doesn't mean you can't change the path, but it does give you opportunities that you may not have expected. And when they come about, you're surprised, and some are good and some are bad, but for the most part, it's a learning process, right? So I guess, I could have taken a different path. And one of the things I did when I graduated from high school is I picked a college that was closer to home, that I thought I would attend. And I ended up, for example, I went to Albany as opposed to going to Washington, and I think that would have been a distinctly different experience. That might have been one change I would have made, but for the most part, I think my political experience is one that, if you're not independently wealthy, which most of us are not, right? So you become beholden to other people for a lot of things. So you don't control your destiny as much as you would like to. And I think that's another driver. You kind of look around and you see what people do, and you're thinking, man, I'm not really quite sure why, she gets to do that and I don't, so part of it's like, I want to do that, so I'm going to do it. Right. So, I mean, from that perspective, I think it's a personal growth kind of thing. You find the things you like and you chase after them.
Right. So talk to us about Albany. What was the reason that you went there?
I went to Albany because, well, first of all, I have a real practice mentality about what I learn, right? I know that knowledge is great, but it's really what you do with it. And I think that's like the biggest thing. When you're a kid, you think about, I have to go to school and I have to learn the subjects and whatever. But the truth is that it's what you do with what you get, that makes the big difference, right? And so I knew for a fact that it was always with a mindset toward trying to acquire internships, trying to get experience, trying to get practice related to the kinds of things that are relevant to my subject, or the career path I wanted to take. I was the only two things I really always wanted to do is run for Congress and run a technology company. So I got one checked off. but I think it's good.
And you knew that back then?
Yeah, those are the two things that I always wanted to do. But it was, one of those things that I think if you find that there's an opportunity to do something else, I mean, you consider it, and you get deflected one way or the other. But yeah, I mean, those are the things I sort of aspire to.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So think about college for you and your transition. You're obviously living with your parents in Lancaster for high school, and then all of a sudden you arrive in Albany, which is a city, but not a New York, right? Or not a DC. So talk about your transition into college. And the students that'll be listening often are most concerned about not having any friends, or
that's a big thing.
Living alone, right? Walking into a dining hall where you don't know anyone as compared to when you were in high school. So just talk through kind of what you remember of that experience.
The great thing about college, especially when you get there, is everybody's in the same boat. There may be some kids who have, picked a roommate, or maybe one or two people from their high school, but it's a brand new social order. And it's a brand new opportunity to meet new people and do new things. And for me, I went to Albany and didn't really know a soul. And it was fun because the dorm structure was such that they had like a 5-person suite. And I'm like, oh, great. I'm going to meet all these guys and they're hanging out. I had like my own room, which people will kill for. I'm like, I really kind of wish I had a roommate, but I really didn't, so. But it was a question, I happened to be in the same room with the RA from the dorm. So, that guy was pretty helpful in terms of introducing us around. And then I just, had made it my point to go and meet everybody in the dorm, just because, you're living with these people and, it's collegial. It's an opportunity to meet new people. And for me, being from Buffalo, there was a substantial number of kids that were from New York City and Long Island. Whole different thing, right? Completely different mindset, a whole different cultural thing. Kids all religions. We didn't have a lot of Jewish kids in the neighborhood where I grew up. It was very Catholic or Lutheran, whatever. They're Italian, Polish, that kind of stuff. Not that many kids there, right? A whole network. It was very cosmopolitan. And that was great too. Just meeting all kinds of kids. And I also the dorm that I lived in had was a special needs dorm too. So there were kids in wheelchairs and, had cerebral palsy and all those kinds of things you don't typically run into like in everyday life, right? You might, but you're not living in close quarters. So you get a whole different perspective on your life and how other people have to live their lives in order to make things do. And for me, it was great. It was great. Albany was just really excellent education. I made tons of friends that I still keep. And, the experience in terms of transition from the professors who were doing, really smart things and sort of advising us. The School of Public Affairs had opened when I got there. I think the first graduating class was probably my senior year thereafter. And that was Nelson Rockefeller put together a school there. And so that was a big lift, I think, for the program generally. And it made a difference in terms of, visibility nationally, because the program itself is well ranked. So, from my perspective, it couldn't have gone any better. And I had a chance to work in state government while I was there as well.
Awesome.
Dale Volker, who used to be the longstanding state senator in the 58th district, was there, and I worked for him. And that led me into, and now I'm dating myself, right? But that led me into working with him and another guy, Bill Paxson, who was a congressman and did exceptionally well in Washington. And I had done campaign work for Jack Kemp when he was doing his congressional races, and we did some of the presidential stuff as well as on the Republican side. But it was, that kind of experience you just carry with you your entire life, and it's the marketing skills and the communication skills and the networking skills and all the other stuff that goes into it. And that's like one of the biggest things college is about is, creating the relationships, maintaining the relationships, and having the ability to kind of reach out and talk to people when you need to in order to get things done. as well as to kind of have personal relationships because you're
Right.
like people. Yeah.
I agree. I went to a very small school, and you're just forced to get to know people very well, right? You're all of a sudden you're living with these folks. And I remember vividly getting invited to a Hanukkah celebration, and the same was true for me. I'm Irish Catholic from Buffalo, so
Right.
but it was like, oh my God, what do I bring to Hanukkah? Do you bring egg? Like it was like such.
Right.
But I mean, what an opportunity to learn, right? And then I ended up in New York, where the Jewish population and the Hanukkah celebrations and all the things were just so much more prevalent. So I agree. It's a lot about experiences and things that you can put, situations and events and, people that you can be meeting while you're at school that are almost as important as the education that you're gaining in the classroom.
Yeah, I agree. And you don't think about that when you're doing it. I don't think, I'm going through the process, but it definitely makes a difference on your character and how you act and the types of things you're doing. And it all adds up.
I agree. So just go back to Rick, how you even had figured out that you wanted to run a tech company, especially back then. I mean, tech was just not a thing like it is now, right? There weren't magazines about the startup world or tech world, television shows about it, startup competitions like ours, So what experience did you have, or how did you find out that it was even an option?
I was an avid subscriber of Inc. magazine.
Yeah.
Don't ask me why. I just enjoyed it. I would sit on, and I would go back and forth on the bus from home to Albany and read Inc. magazine. And they talked about all kinds of cool things, right? It was like, I was in love with ideas. The power of ideas is amazing. And the kinds of things that you are able to kind of look at, and you're watching new industries emerge, and you see this kind of vibrancy to, activity around you. For me, right, part of the driver was, you grow up in the Rust Belt, you watch economic activity kind of die, you realize jobs are critically important to how everybody lives and makes money and functions in a society. And the focus of all this activity was trying to figure out a way to bring jobs to Western New York. I mean, that was what my thought process was even then. I guess because you could see what kind of impact it is when you don't have them, right? And the ability to earn money and like move forward is critical, right? So it was sort of with a focus on, okay, what great ideas are out there that you can do something with? Like, how do you put those things in place? How do you do the process? I mean, I thought at some point in time it would make sense to me is to all the pieces, and you watch the government programs and you watch all this stuff, but it really is not super, I don't know, dispositive of all the things that are necessary to do it, right? I mean, you almost have to go through the process or have a family member who's running their own business who kind of shows you to do that, right? And that was not my family, so I was sort of learning by the seat of my pants kind of stuff. And I worked in banking a little while at Empire of America right after I got done with college and when I moved back home. And that was pretty interesting because I got to do marketing, product development, all kinds of more creative things, which that was sort of, I found my big strength was sort of the creativity part of it, right? And I guess it goes into the arts and abstract thinking in terms of like law school and things like that. It sort of all falls in the same side of the category. And I think that, all those things sort of came together for me, understanding what I could do well. And then it was like, okay, so fine, I'm a good abstract thinker and I'm really good with ideas and I can do this stuff. Now what? Like, is there a job that I can go do this? And I think today there's probably a lot more and a lot clearer opportunities in that regard. But at that point in time, there wasn't. So it was just kind of like, okay, what next, right? So.
That's really, really interesting. I love the magazine, right? But you chose to read that magazine. You chose to buy it or subscribe to it, right? Just because you were interested in it. And look what it's led to, something as simple as reading it as you're on the bus, which is just fascinating. So just talk through, let's connect the dots, from Albany. It sounds like you moved back home.
Right.
What jobs, you talked about the banking one, but what other jobs did you find yourself in? Like, how did your skills translate to kind of lead you to where you are now?
Well, initially when I moved from Albany to Buffalo, I did so because I was helping out on the political front. I decided I wanted to run for town councilman and I lost by a couple hundred votes. And so I had a choice of if I was going to stay in that arena, you could just see where you're kind of, if you don't have a career and you don't have cash flow and you're not doing all the stuff that, you're just not in a good place, right? You have to make your way through the world. So I got a job in a bank, didn't really want to work in a bank, but ended up being a great experience. Through that experience, at the time, there were a tremendous number of mergers and acquisitions because the interest rates were super high and banks were consolidating and there were a lot of banks in trouble. So I got to participate on teams that, acquired new banks and did training and all those kinds of things for the transition. But I determined while I was in banking, I talked to one of the senior vice presidents who, that's another thing, is like cultivating people who you can talk to, right? That, hey, I have an interest in this, right? I'm not really sure how I get there. I went to business school for a day at the University of Buffalo, by the way. One day, one class in economics, I sat there and I said, nah, this isn't going to work. So all the people who helped me, they're like, what? I go, no, I knew right away. I wasn't sitting through economics class is not really what it's going to do for me. So, and I went to law school, which was exactly what I should have done. And in fact, I was encouraged by the people at the bank to say, that's probably a better route. And that was perfect because, again, it's an entire skill set which teaches you a framework for thinking, but it doesn't really teach you how to do anything, So I think the focus of all that activity is, okay, I wanted to learn how to basically build companies. And so I took a lot of small business and finance classes while I was at the University of Buffalo. And then as soon as I had the opportunity to kind of open things up, I did. I helped friends out. One of my friends was doing a shampoo company. He was making shampoo for dogs in his bathtub. It was crazy. But there was a lot of projects like that. It's anything you could think of, and it was just fun stuff to do. And I think that's the other thing is just get your hands dirty. Jump in and do things. You don't think it leads to anything, and it doesn't have to, but it's really good experience, and you pick up little bits and pieces from every project you work on. When I was at law school, I thought it was pretty cool. Since I had worked at the bank, I had a work study job at the admissions office, and they were paying me to file things. And I thought, this is really dumb. I could do so many other things. So it was kind of weird. I had this dream, and it said, okay, so you really got to get to the top in order to do this. So the next day, this true story, I put a suit coat on. I went to the office of the president of the University of Buffalo. I talked to the secretary. I said, hey, I have this work study job. They're paying me to hang out here. I'm not really sure what I'm doing here, but it's kind of a boring thing. Do you have anything else that's kind of interesting that I can do? I have some marketing skills. She looked at me and she goes, just a second. So Steve Sample was the president of the university at the time. She goes, wait a second. So she walks in, she talks to Steve Sample. She comes out. She goes, oh, let's get on the hall here for a second. She walks me over to the head. They had a brand new office. It was called Office of the Vice President for Sponsored Programs at the University of Buffalo, which is their big marketing arm for all the technology stuff. But they had just started it. I mean, it had to be like that week. And they were like, we need an intern if you want to come help us. I'm like, I'm in. And so that's what I did. I went there and kind of helped them develop lots of things. We fleshed out the first plan to get the National Earthquake Engineering Laboratory there. There's another friend of mine who's now a professor at the university, I think it's at UCLA, Pete Lunenfeld. He and I worked on a project to really put together an inventor's, essentially communication to all the faculty about the value of inventing and creating up an innovation. It was the first time the university had that. So we sort of fell into that. I wrote the first intellectual property manual while I was in graduate school for the university, which was looked at one of my professors. So it's just a lot of the stuff that you just go and do, and people just sort of, okay, excellent, move on. And I ended up, the thing with that was excellent was I worked there for half a semester, and then I got a summer job. I was working at a law firm. They called me up and said, hey, do you want to continue in this job? And I'm like, yeah. And they said, well, if you do that, we pay your tuition and we give you a stipend. So I went to law school for the second 2 years, basically for free, and they paid for me to go. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I didn't know about this gig, but I, again, just fell into it. So it's the weird stuff you do. Just step out of your comfort zone, check things out, and, things happen.
Wow, I mean, it just goes back to your piece earlier about, not having the park and doing something about it, right? So you're aggravated by the boredom that you were experiencing in a role, and why not go express
Right.
the ability that you have to do something different? 100%. I say that a lot. If anyone, wants to talk to me or wants to I will give anyone a half hour, an hour of my time, it's, you just have
Yeah.
to ask.
Yeah. Well,
And you
because you
never
never
know.
know. I mean, it's good for you and it's good for them. And there's someone else. I'm always mindful of, hey, I know someone who needs this. I know someone who could help you do that. I mean, again, it's the network, but it's, it's just helping people, right? I mean, it's really just helping people.
Right, and connecting people, but having the interest and awareness of the importance of putting yourself out there is what's critical.
And that's, I think, when you're a kid, you're more concerned about what other people think about what you do, and what they might say, or what negative might happen, or what why you're wasting your time. And it's not about that at all. It's like getting through that every day. It's like getting to yes. It's like that sales manual, right? Where you can just get it. I know I'm gonna 1 in 100 sell, right? I'm gonna ask the 100 people, right? If I'm gonna go through 99, okay, great. If I get it on 36, I'm okay too.
Right.
So same thought process.
That's incredible. And what a story for UB. I feel like there should be like a plaque in the entrepreneurial program with your name.
Well, they had great people there too. Mike Landy was there for a while, and he was a great boss, and there's just a lot of really smart people. And I think, they've done a great job, building up the program, and the university itself it doesn't get the credit that it really deserves in a lot of fronts,
I agree.
Some point in time.
Yeah, great partnership with them. Okay, so let's jump to kind of where you are now.
Okay.
At a 43North portfolio company.
Yeah.
So what is the information? I mean, I love it.
Yeah.
So talk through how that came to life.
I was dragged into it. No, actually, I had sort of made my life as a practicing at law with early stage technology companies in life sciences. I did computers and software and a bunch of stuff too, right? And I kind of cycled through a number of projects. And my first job out of actually the first law firm that I worked from was at a company called IVAX Corporation, which turned into, it got bought by Teva, which is the largest generic pharmaceutical company in the world. At the time, it was 3 tiny companies. They kind of just merged together. There's a guy by the name of Phil Frost, who's down here in Miami. He was a dermatologist, but made a bunch of money in a company called Key Pharmaceuticals. And he had a vision for how he wanted to build a company, and he kind of put the things together. And, it blossomed. I mean, the guy's, a billionaire at this point in time. But at the time, and he made a lot of money for other people. There was a lot of stock options dished around and things like that. So I didn't have enough money to retire by any stretch. So I was practicing law, but a few of my friends had quite a bit of money because they were early on in the company, and they decided they wanted to start other pharmaceutical companies. And so I, being a lawyer, I'm like, hey, I'll help you out. I have no problem. And I had another friend of mine who did accounting related and finance stuff. So we would jump in and help these guys do their thing, right? And we work to a certain point in time, and they would try and get money and, develop out new products and technologies. And one or two of them, one of them hit, it got sold for $500 million. And that kind of thing, happened a few times. And we've had our failures too. We've lost significant amounts of money in, telecommunications and hardware and software and modems and stealth technology. I mean, just a lot of headaches too. But, volunteering your time and helping out other people to see what, just basically helping them has provided a lot of avenues for growth. And so my life sciences career basically was formed by jumping into the IVAX and then continuing to work these ventures with friends of mine who were interested in promoting various elements of healthcare and development. So when a friend of ours, his family was plagued by ulcerative colitis, which is a digestive disease, right? And sometimes it's controlled by medication. Lots of times it's not. When it's not, they actually take out sections of your colon, your stomach, and it's just a horrible disease and a really difficult thing on quality of life. And it's inflammatory, so your body's sort of reacting to something. No one knows really what it is. He is a biomedical engineer, had suffered from it himself. His son had, bowel resection. His father had it. He's like, there's got to be a better way. So he went sort of on a search to find options to treat this stuff. He was looking at stem cell technology and ended up with a guy by the name of Steve Badalak at the University of Pittsburgh, who's a leader in what's called extracellular matrix. It's all natural substance that basically helps your body heal. It sort of creates a barrier structure over damaged parts, and then your body sort of fixes itself. That's his big skill set. And he co-developed this product, and our friend Mark's like, yeah, I got this thing, but I don't know what to do with it, right? So, and we're like, well, do you want to start a company? Yeah, kind of. And I said, all right, fine. So my friend Jerry, another friend of mine, Gary, we were like, okay, fine, hang out here. My friend Gary had an office. We're just trying to do something with it, right? And I was familiar with what was going on in Buffalo and the 43North project. And I was always looking at stuff to say, hey, there's some really good technology. Maybe we can plug it in at home and see how it goes. And as you know, as I use the word home, it's sort of always home. So we applied and did pretty well. And obviously it was our first year. It was, at the time it was known as Asana Medical, and went through the process and went through the competition and ended up getting some money. And that served as a seed capital for the early stage of the company. And then we raised about another $1.4 million to get it to the point where we had, we're able to we have basic animal studies done. And because the product that we're using has been used in a different form before, the criteria by the FDA for us to get approval was a little less stringent, because it's known and it's safe and effective. So really we had to prove that our hydrogel, which we're still building, right, when it's used, would operate the same way as the sheet form of the substance, which helps and heals. So that's the point we're at now. We're closing a formulation, and we've been waiting to do clinical trials. We ended up getting, you have assorted headaches in terms of the development of the business. Money was hard to come by. In our business, early stage companies, if they have a lot of data, they can get, more money. Right now, we can't get more data till we get about another $4 to $5 million to get clinical trials started. We signed a deal in January of 2019 with a public company that was in the process of raising money themselves to kind of build a diversified and an integrated healthcare company, which included early stage companies like us. And they've had such a troubled time to kind of get cash raised. So at this point, we got another $1.5 million in, and we need to get a few more $1 million in. Hopefully it will come soon in the short run, so, we've leveraged, we contacted, we associated with a lot of really good people. The really interesting about this project is how you can reach out to people. And I'll cite a couple instances. So there's Dr. Badalak, who's at the University of Pittsburgh, is pretty well known in his space as one of the leaders in the world. Mark, my friend Raymer, who is the inventor of the technology, who worked with Steve on this project, was able to get in touch with a guy by the name of Stephen Wexner. Stephen's arguably the top colorectal surgeon in the world. He works at Cleveland Clinic down here. He's a guy who does the surgeries, right? And he's looking at it going, yeah, if this could cut down on the number of surgeries, even though it's my bottom line, this would be a great thing if we could do it. So he associated with the project, and he's his chief medical officer. Along the way, we picked up a company called Cook Biotech, which is, the Cook family is extremely well known. I think the owner of the family is the largest, I think he's the richest guy in Indiana, really. I mean, they own 45 companies. It's a family-owned business. They own all kinds of companies that are all sort of in medical devices, technologies, that kind of space. They looked at our project, and they had passed on a project that was somewhat similar to ours. That ended up being a multi-billion-dollar company. And while they're making product for that company, they're like, we had a chance to invest early on, and we didn't do that. So they said, they saw our stuff and saying, well, not only we can manufacture with you, but we'll put a little skin in the game, because we missed out on this great $1 billion investment. So they came in and they bought a little chunk of our company through some of our activities, which was great. And I think the last sort of great thing was we had a scientist who worked with a Nobel Prize winning group in the gastroenterology space. And that group was responsible for determining, I don't know, H. pylori, but it's basically that stomach ulcers are caused by certain kinds of bacteria, right? So his crew got the Nobel Prize for doing that. He didn't get the Nobel Prize, but what he did is he saw that problem and he invented the solution. So there's like a 3-pronged treatment you take if you get H. pylori. to eliminate the ulcer. And that's his claim to fame. And he saw our stuff and he's like, this is great. I absolutely would like to try it. So he's going to be the principal investigator in our project in Australia. So, and that's all as a measure of, attending medical conferences and meeting different people and just going through it and asking, just going and asking, because there are a lot of people out there and they understand the value of helping and, just being, getting out there, being assertive.
That seems to be such a common theme here in our conversations, Rick. So in terms of, for high school students that are, any age student that's going to be listening to this, do you have any kind of advice overall in regards to doing such things or, life in general that these students can take away with them?
Well, you know what, I think, find the thing you're passionate about and do it, and don't avoid it because it's going to be there, and I think what that is. Generally, everybody knows what that is, right? And some people may have a perception about what is important or not important, but quite honestly, that's going to be the big driver in your life. And so I think you should take advantage of that. The second thing is don't be dissuaded by obstacles because there are many. I mean, this project that we're working on, we expected it to be a 5-year project. I think we're in year 7.5. Oh, it's still going. Yeah, I mean, it's easy to quit, but diligence at the end of the day, all these ventures, I mean, you look at Jeff Bezos, his company hit the wall and he went bankrupt basically and restarted the whole thing. That's not uncommon, especially in early stage ventures. You got to be ready in the long haul. I think the other thing is it's great to have preparation for all these projects, but always have a backup plan. Being a lawyer and having the opportunity to practice law amidst all the chaos that these early stage companies cause, tremendously helpful. If you don't have another means of income, or if you don't have another ability to kind of, live your life beyond the, square room of your development company, it becomes a lot more difficult. If you get out of college and you do it, it's a little different than when you're a little bit older and you have kids or family or however it works out. So, I mean, those are all things. But when you're a kid, take chances, take a look at things and don't say no. I mean, you never know. That's the big thing. You never know. So try it.
And read Inc. magazine, clearly.
Yes, Inc. magazine, Fast Company. There's a lot of good ones out there.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be honest with you. I read that magazine. I could not go to sleep. I couldn't read it before I went to bed because my mind would not turn off because there's so many things. Yeah. And now I have a daughter who's 17. She's getting ready to go to college. And my wife's kind of technologically inclined as well. She's been doing a lot of stuff in esports lately, in gaming. But we're looking at, artificial intelligence and data analytics and so many really cool things. And you could see the next 10, 15 years laid out in front of you. And you can tell kids, hey, if you're interested in this, take a look at this because you can see where it's going. I mean, it's just tremendous. And, while the technology is going to evolve, just getting the basic skill sets, and you don't have to be an expert in everything, but it's important. It doesn't matter what you do. There's some element of science and technology skill or knowledge, because it's going to come in handy whatever you do, whether you're a nurse or working, a construction job or, whatever it is that you end up doing.
Yeah, yesterday we were on with another founder, and what was my point? I forgot what I was going to say. But something you said resonated with what we talked with Lauren about. Anyway, it's in that video.
Okay, well, look for Lauren's video to get the inside info.
Yes. Okay, well, anything further? I mean, anything you miss about Buffalo? How often do you get back here?
Well, this year it's been a little interrupted, but usually 3 times a year, minimally. I always go at holiday time. Usually get down for a wedding or a family thing. Someone's graduating, that kind of stuff. And then my dad likes to go hunting. So we go and take him out, but he's like 85 now. So he's getting tired of going in and out of the duck blind in the middle of the, swamp. So that slowed down a little bit, but yeah, definitely get in town and, make sure you get all the food you need to eat and catch up with friends.
Good. Well, keep us in mind if you're ever back. We have our new office in Seneca 1.
Oh yeah, no, I can't wait to go there. I saw that. That's tremendous. Are you happy with it?
I'd love to show you around. Yeah. Slowly coming back to life.
Yeah. So now that building used to be the old HSBC building next to the arena, right?
Yeah, right down the block. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah. Hopefully, the Sabres turn around like your building did. I have a lot of optimism this year. For some reason, I feel like it's come together.
All right, let's see. I hope you're right. Well, thank you, Rick. Nice to connect. I really appreciate your time.
Sorry about that. Hold on one second. I guess that means the interview's over. Editing is important. Okay, I think that's done. They don't trust me. Anyway, yeah, so.
Well, thank you. This was wonderful. Really,
I
really.
appreciate your time. Thanks very much.
Yeah, and I hope to meet you maybe over the holidays or, whenever you're in town, we're around.
Okay, I'll appreciate that. And if I am in the neighborhood, I'm definitely stopping by. I'll drag the kids over because I'd like to see the space in.
Sure.
We try and make them go to places like this because I just feel like it's a fire to be caught, when you see this stuff happening, and it's just so much fun. It's so cool. The neat thing about, incubator facilities generally is just lots of people with ideas, bouncing around off the walls, and you don't know who you're going to meet. And there's just so much collaboration that goes on, and there's a collegiality and all the cool stuff.
That's exactly why we're here. So yeah, come on down.
Yeah, hopefully we'll make you some money this year. That would be good.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll do our best.
Get back to work.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
Take
Rick,
care.
thanks so much for your time.
All right, we'll do. Bye-bye.
Bye.